When I first started playing and singing country music, I was especially enchanted by the magical sport of yodeling. And I did everything I could to find resources on yodeling and country music and how to do it, and all of the how-to books I would take out of the library and try to learn. And of course, who came up the most just as a yodeling country musician was Jimmie Rodgers. And he's another one of those people who's such a huge influence to me and everybody else that it was almost too obvious to make a musical influences video about him. But he's a really interesting person and considered the father of country music, so it had to be done at some point. And he was born in 1897 and grew up in Mississippi. He was one of 7 children, and his mother died when he was only 6 years old. And his father worked on the railroad and was gone most of the time. And so he wasn't really able to be around to make sure the kids went to school and did everything that they were supposed to do. And Jimmy would run off a lot with the traveling medicine shows that came through the South in the early 1900s when he was just a little boy, and start learning music and performance from them. And his father saw that he wasn't going to be going to school very much, so he got Jimmy a job on the railroad as a water boy. And now he had the opportunity to travel with and stay in the black work camps and learn from all these other railroad workers and hobos how to sing the blues and all these work chants of the Gandhi dancers. And so that was a huge part of the influence on him, and then him as the father of country music was a huge influence on country music. And this worked for him a long time. He became a brakeman on the railroad and was just considered the yodeling brakeman or the singing brakeman. It was a big part of his shtick that he was a real railroad worker and a musician. But when he was 27, he got tuberculosis and wasn't able to go out and travel on the railroad and work as much. And so he put a lot more effort into just developing his musical career from that point. And he traveled up to Asheville, North Carolina, and got a weekly spot on a radio show, and got some popularity that way. And then in 1927, in Bristol, Virginia, they had this series of recordings that were made called the Bristol Sessions that are largely considered the Big Bang of country music, where they recorded the Carter family and Jimmie Rodgers, and just had a huge influence on popularizing mountain music and what was becoming considered country music to the rest of the world. And he had a lot of success with his Bristol sessions, and at one point he heard some Swiss emissaries yodeling at a church service, and he really liked that and kind of developed it for his own style and decided to add it into his blues and the music that he played. And so a little while after that, he made a recording of a yodeling song. And even though this was during the Great Depression, and there really wasn't a huge market for buying recordings of music or going out to shows for most people, still his yodeling recording sold 500,000 copies, and his shows were sold out wherever he went after that, now that he had tapped into the magic of yodeling. And that really, really set him on a good path for his career, but he was still so sick from the TB, and it was getting worse, and he continued recording. And because it was the Great Depression, recording companies used to go out and do field recordings and go to where the artists were and bring all their equipment, but now they didn't really have the finances to do that, so artists would have to come to them. And Jimmie Rodgers went up to do a series of recordings in New York City, even though he was really sick. It was really important to him to be making this music, and he worked really hard and got a lot of songs done, but he had to have a nurse travel with him, and he would just lie on a cot and rest in between songs because he was so exhausted. and he died a couple days after finishing those recordings in New York City, and he was only 35, but had a huge influence. And so, yeah, some of his recordings have other musicians on them, like Louis Armstrong is a famous one, and so he'll have some other instruments, but those last recordings were pretty bare. He played guitar and sang, and I really like the sound of it. But Hank Snow and Chet Atkins in 1955 decided to put together a band and record some backing tracks for these old Jimmie Rodgers recordings, just to have a recording of what it would sound like if he had a whole band doing that with him. And it's called Jimmie Rodgers and the Rainbow Ranch Boys. And he was very social and charming, well-loved person. You often hear that these really talented musician types are kind of hard to work with, but he was very generous and always doing free performances for people. And not only is he considered the father of country music, but also credited with popularizing the blues and bringing that to a wider audience, and even in the early formation of rock and roll with a lot of how he did his songs. And I do a number of his songs. One of his most famous ones, Waiting for a Train, T for Texas, Peach Pickin' Time in Georgia. A lot of these have been covered by really famous people across different genres. And I really like this old 1929 one called Any Old Time that is a lot like the old jazz songs and less like modern country songs. Because with modern country songs, there's often a verse and a chorus, and those structures are repeated, and the verse is usually what they play the instrumental part over. But in a lot of the old swing and jazz songs, there would be this verse leading up to the main part of the song that often a lot of people didn't even know. It'd be kind of, usually they'd come out in a musical, like a Broadway musical, and so it's just like the intro part. And then the real part of the song that everyone played the instrumental over was the chorus, technically. And so I like that has this really old structure in this song. And it has some yodeling at the beginning that I never used to do, but it kind of bothers me when people cover Jimmie Rodgers songs that have yodeling and they don't do the yodeling part. So I want to kind of practice what I preach and try to get that unpracticed yodel part at the beginning. So bear with me. A-dee-da-lay, 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 oh-da-da-da-da-dee. I just received your letter. You're down and out, you say. At first I thought I would tell you to travel on the other way. In my memory lingers all you once were to me. I'm gonna give you another chance to prove what you can be. Any old time you wanna come back home, drop me a line, honey, say no more, you won't. You had the chance to play the game fair when you left me, sweetheart. You only left a load of care. Now that you're down, I'm gonna stick by you. If you would only tell me that your roaming days are through, you'll find me here like the day you left me alone. Any old time you wanna come back home. come back home.